Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our first planning board session of the month. My name is Yoslyn Daniels. I am the acting chair of the planning board. And before we get started, I'd just like to make a few remarks. I want to thank everybody, my fellow board members, for their support and grace and trust in me as I take on this interim role. And I also would like to say, if you have any questions, I do encourage you to talk to Jack. I did have a chance to chat with him this morning. And I think, it was a good decision, and from his perspective and also the mayor's. It's productive for us to move forward. So just wanted to get that out there because I think that's the elephant in the room. And I want to address that. I would like to ask to modify the agenda items and sort of move up the public hearing as well as the new business for 49 Main Street. So I do know we have quite a load to get to on the Marathon site in Hudson Valley Pure Trail, and I certainly don't want to keep people here later than they need to be. So do I have a motion to move it up? Motion to move it up.
Second.
The public hearing. Thank you. All those? Aye.
Aye.
Fantastic.
Hey, here's Matt.
Hello.
Hey,
Yeah.
let me see. Here we go. Okay, so I want to start with the public hearing. Before we open up the public hearing, I did want to address just one thing that I think we did not finalize. And question for you, because you have a lot of the history on this, and that's confirming if a parking table is needed.
Well, the first piece was how the original site plan review was done, whether or not it was done as a unit. Do we have I assume it was done as a unit, right?
I wasn't the attorney at the time, but based on, what your code reads, I would
know to
assume.
write the resolution. That was a task I kept
Yeah,
saying many times. But my opinion is, even if it were not done as a unit and done by tenancy, it reduces the demand anyway. It'd be nice to write the resolution.
yeah, with the information.
But if we don't have it, I think it's, look, when you take away a salon that would have separate trips, that would, park for, an
Yeah.
extended period for a
Mhm.
different trip, right? And then you just increase a store by 900 square feet. Not probably more customers coming, maybe they say 5 minutes longer to walk 900 square feet, but I mean, so in my opinion, it reduces the demand on parking anyway. So that's my 2 cents.
I would
Okay.
agree as well.
So I guess if we don't have it, I think we should I guess we could just say our assumption, we couldn't pull it, but we assumed the parking was approved.
Okay.
I think it would have, well, no, not necessarily. It was shared parking, or smart parking. They reduced the requirement by 20%, the planning board did.
Mhm.
That was not a great site for that, because they all have the same business hours. But that's what they did. So I would suspect that indicates that it was approved by the unit,
Okay,
the full shopping mall. Yeah, so, but
okay.
again, I don't think it's an issue. And if we haven't done our work, then that's not theirs.
All right. So then I guess I'll make a motion that when we get to the point where we have to approve and sign it, that we just make that assumption and put that as part of the resolution. So with that, I would like to open up the public hearing for folks for comment. Do you want to start with the public hearing?
Would you like me to give a brief presentation of what we're doing, or just want to go straight to the public commenting on the application?
Yes, absolutely. I think that would be great for folks that may not be aware of exactly what the scope is.
Sure. So for the record, Corey Talamo from Zarin and Stein, here tonight on behalf of the Food Town. Pretty straightforward application that we have before you this evening. Looking to take over the former Soho Salon space, about 950 square feet. So it's just removing an interior wall, expanding the supermarket into that space. No exterior modifications are proposed. And this one is pretty straightforward.
Okay.
I'm more than happy to answer any questions anybody has about it.
And for those that are in the room, would you just state your name, please?
Sure, John Rhoda. I'm here on behalf of Noah Cass. He couldn't make it tonight and he extends his apologies, but what Corey said, I have similar notes about, we were talking about the parking issue that you brought up already. I'm sure we have the plans that, we're just gonna take over the salon, cut a couple of holes in the back and the front of the aisle, similar to we did in the post office, actually almost the same we did to the post office, so the structural wall will be, not compromised in any way, it'll be reinforced and moving the existing door, the opening we have now in the store, just locking it like we did in the post office entrance and opening up the salon door and putting an automatic door in naturally, for the customers and stuff. So they can get in and out, and then that'd be the only thing we're gonna do to the outside of the building. There'll be, it'll be the way it is existing. The rear of the building, we're not touching, so, with the trucking or anything, so that would be, existing the way it is, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, how about the folks on the phone? Regarding the expansion of Food Town Supermarket? Okay. They're here for another reason. All right.
Those are my favorite applications. Good distraction.
Yeah, right. Okay, if there aren't any other comments, I'm happy to close the public hearing. I don't think there's any reason to extend it. And then now I'd like to take a vote to approve the resolution to
We have a resolution.
or I think you do, do you have a draft resolution?
I don't believe there's one, yeah.
Okay, well, we have to create a resolution to vote on.
Yeah, would approve the
The site plan.
application,
Just
yeah,
the
yeah.
application.
application, and then in 2 weeks, we'll have a draft resolution.
Okay, got it. So
Yeah,
can I have a
Hey, just want to confirm, so you can verbally approve it tonight and then follow up with a written resolution. Is that what you guys are going to do? I couldn't hear that.
Yes, that's what we're gonna do.
Okay, and then did you do a secret classification? This would be a type 2 action under secret.
We,
Type 2 exempt.
yeah, we did that. last
Yes.
time.
You did that last time? Okay, and was it referred to the county, Jeff? Did you get the county comments in?
Yes. And they sent back and approved.
Right, matter of local concern. Okay,
Okay,
Good.
awesome. So motion to,
So moved.
all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Fantastic.
Great. Thank you very much for your time. Really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
guys.
Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Bye now. Thank you.
And what produce?
All right.
Is that a condition?
No, it is not. It's approved prior to the request.
All right, we're gonna talk next up to workshop 49 Main Street. Do you wanna come forward with it? And maybe just state your name and give us just a quick summary of the proposal.
Okay, so hi, I'm Kathy Tolman. I am the manager at Houlihan Lawrence across the street, 60 Main Street. Our lease is coming due and we're looking to downsize basically and move to the spot across the street at 49 Main Street, which we're going from 1,400 square feet to 800 square feet. And nobody works in the office anymore.
It's all remote.
Everybody stays home and works from home, so we're just looking, because currently 49 Main is being used as retail. So we need a change of use from retail to allow us to put the office over there.
Got it.
The 49 is the jewelry shop or?
No, it was the old Cape Cod leather.
It's studio.
It's currently a boutique. This is Matt Holloway. I'm the owner, or one of the owners. Yeah, it's a boutique studio right now.
And if I remember, we did this already once, but it was pulled back, right? For a law office.
We actually had the, yes, that's correct.
Yes.
And we had a retail move-in instead. That's why it was pulled back.
Gotcha.
Okay. So I see that there's so I'm gonna just ask a couple of questions and then I'll open it up for the rest of my fellow board members to ask questions as well. So I see that there's a site plan, so thank you, and the floor plan as well. Is there gonna be any changes to like outside signage or anything like that? No.
Well,
changes?
they'll change the sign from Studio Tedesco to something, but whatever historic approves.
Okay.
So yeah, we're easy. Something we have to
You
have.
weren't- They didn't refer you for that yet, right? You'll just do that next.
Yeah, we'll do that next after this, I
I think
assume.
that's how it works.
Yeah. So yeah, but they're not picky, so we'll do whatever conforms.
Okay. I didn't see any kind of environmental assessment form in the application. Do we need to do that here?
It's always good to at least have the form
Yeah.
filled out and put it in the
Yeah.
file. I would say that this is also a type 2 exempt,
Yeah.
once we go through the form, but. Used to be anything in the district was a problem, but luckily they changed that.
Mhm.
So things that aren't a problem can actually not be a problem.
So that's an action item then, right? For,
Yeah, just fill out the short form EAF, yeah.
and then assuming since we're lowering the square footage, whatever, was there an existing parking table to that property?
That's
Been
it.
at that property
Yeah, it
for
was
30
in-
years,
Okay.
so.
So I also didn't see a parking table in there as well, so I think that that's something also.
No,
that-
Jeff told me that's something that you tell us what we need.
Yeah, but those still
One
go-
space, it's basically one space for 150.
Yeah.
So it's
So
100 square
I think just for the public hearing, if we could just get a parking table dropped on top, just a table, literally. I mean, I can send you a copy. It's
Okay.
just, it's basically the square footage is X divided by,
Okay.
by 3. And then it's, number of parking spaces.
Mhm.
And then, so that's the parking spaces, that calculates the parking spaces that are required for the project. What you have is 0, but you're actually grandfathered 1 on Main Street. And then the rest you would buy with waivers, but if you have that small of a space, it's not gonna be much.
Mhm.
It's really just 350 square feet of occupied space?
800.
Oh, 800.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think it's 1 for 150,
So
well,
it's 1 for 150.
I assume that's the first floor. It's 1 for 300 on
On the
upper
first
floors,
floor.
but I
Oh,
think that's
really?
an elevated first floor. You don't disagree,
There's
do
only a
you?
basement underneath.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
It is an elevated first floor, and it's been that way since 1962, I believe.
Right. It's just that if you, for upper floors, you actually get a lower parking requirement. For two and up,
Oh.
but I just want to make sure nobody disagreed that in my opinion, it's just an elevated first floor, it's like a parlor floor.
so it's still 150.
One,
correct? Yeah.
that's for discussion, whatever you
So
guys think.
the requirement is 5 parking spaces?
I'm sorry?
Sorry,
Was it 150 square feet? I didn't hear what's the requirement?
yeah, 150 per one space, so you just divide 800 or 150
So
into
that's
800.
5.3, so is
Yeah.
it 5?
Yeah, so it's requiring 5, because I don't really,
Other ones.
Okay.
So before,
Okay,
Yeah,
so we don't have any other grandfather, even like, because we've been across the street and.
right, because
okay,
wouldn't it be pre-existing, they're going from a larger square footage to a smaller square footage?
would they be able to apply for waivers?
Yeah, would there be a waiver on the parking? Because again, this is a pre-existing non-conforming, and it's been,
That doesn't exist in our code. In 2010, payment in lieu of parking waivers were introduced.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Payment in lieu of parking waivers were introduced to the code under Gallagher's administration. Prior to that, they were just doing all kinds of, I don't know, paper or mental gymnastics about spaces were coming from, leased spaces and garages or whatever. And so the payment in lieu of parking waivers was basically to set up a fund that would pay for parking, issues. And then basically you buy a waiver, for a payment in lieu of parking.
Triggered every time there's a change of use in a building.
They're a single use waiver, right? So anything from 2010 forward if you're touching it, you own it, you got to bring it up to the current code.
Right.
Right, and the parking waivers are in the current code, but it won't be too painful. I think they're either 275 or 250.
250.
250.
Is it a one-time cost?
So
Yes.
Okay, so for one time, it would be about approximately 5, I assume you round down on fractional?
Is it 4 because we have a grandfather one?
So it'd be 4, so the
Before
total cost,
$1,000 of waiver fee, or let's call it
Okay.
impact fee. I think they're going to change that in the current code.
okay,
So
Okay,
is
so
that the parking
when do you need that?
table the waiver and the environmental short form.
Do I bring a check with the table or?
No, that comes, so the parking waivers are discretionary to the village board, right? The village board of trustees decides whether or not to issue a parking waiver. There has never been an instance, in my knowledge, where they've denied it. So, that doesn't mean they're going to approve it, but I don't know of any reason why they wouldn't. So that we send our recommendation over there saying, we support your application, but if were this to happen, which is likely the case. We send it over there to the village board. They take it up as a matter. When the village board meets and decides whether or not to issue the waivers, then you send Jeff a check.
One point of note, there'd probably be less traffic than the studio that's currently there today and less impact on parking. Would that be taken into consideration?
Fortunately, the code is just, kind of black and white, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. Again, like I said, I think currently today, there's actually more parking and more traffic impact with it being retail than it would be under a real estate. And I was just wondering if there's any waiver on that. That's all. Or the board can make a recommendation.
That's a fair point. Although you could also say these are long-term parkers, right? Yeah.
No, I don't. One would be, it's only the office currently today, and Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, only has one yourself in it, right? From one real estate agent,
There's two.
which
of
is
us.
under the waiver.
There's myself and an assistant that work Monday through Friday, and on the weekends, there's only one person.
Right.
Look at their specific situation
Yeah.
and see what they have.
It was massive.
What,
I think that was like an.
The
outline.
logic is the same, though.
And the fact that they currently have that under the original retail, under the original location, there's no additional parking impact, there's actually less.
Yeah, I think as long as the employees don't park for more than 4 hours. you're fine.
No, I don't, most real estate agents are actually out and showing houses. So,
No, I don't want to. Okay,
It is inconsistent.
yeah, I mean, we should say it, but what Matt was saying is that for 40 Main was able to negotiate with the village additional parking offset, like somewhere else. And so should you want that to be an option, I would encourage that communication with the village board of trustees when you have
You
to
need
seek
long-term
your
parking.
waivers. Maybe that could also be a part of the conversation. Should you need
Long-term.
long-term parking?
Yeah, as long as the parking habits of, what you're paying the waiver for, right? Comply with the parking rules on Main Street, then it should.
Parking restrictions,
the
yeah.
Restrictions,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there's, Jeff, is it 2 or 4 hours on Main? I always forget. 4, right?
Different
4,
spots,
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's 4.
So part of the reason why this came up and why we couldn't recommend the waivers there is because it was very, very large. It was
Yeah,
32 seats.
Yeah.
Was the old, it's not the
The
issue.
garage there,
The
they
garage,
was on the
yeah.
office, yeah.
I don't
So
think it's actually inconsistent. I think that project was inconsistent. Does that make sense? I think we've
that project
applied,
is an anomaly.
is an
Yeah.
anomaly. Yeah, exactly. So I think we've applied the code as you've articulated it, that you just need a parking table
Yeah.
to, make sure you calculate the number of waivers you need to pay for, and then it's okay, right?
But I think
And-
As long as it's not like 50 spots.
Right.
But I do think that as precedence, though, you should be aware that that happened. And should you need longer than 2 hours, 4 hours, like long-term parking, that there's an option to request that.
Yeah, exactly.
So Don, maybe the whereas statements could just distinguish why this is very different from the other application.
Right, so just to backtrack, so what's the current use there now?
Right now, it's a boutique studio. So
Yeah.
it has a lot,
And
it's
the proposed use is an office, a real estate office?
real estate office, 1 to 2 people. And that's it.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to think with the 40 Main, because the parking waivers. was, that's really for like retail uses, correct?
Right.
Well,
The
40
reason-
Main was,
yeah.
there was mixed use. There was 2 retail locations
Well, that
plus
came later, yeah.
office
Right.
space.
Right,
The retail uses paid the parking waiver fee, and it was on the office space that a deal was worked out with the village. But that office, the deal took into account the fee for, I believe it was 29 parking waivers, which is what they were looking for.
It was a massive number of waivers.
Right.
I don't think we're going for the
So
massive amount of
anything,
waiver.
anything that you could do, John, obviously, as we know, what you.
yeah, so don't,
conceptualized this
Matt,
is-
don't we usually do a comparison, like, okay, here's the current use, and according to the code, it requires X amount of off-street parking spaces. Here's the proposed use, and according to the code, it requires X plus amount of parking spaces, and don't we just require the waiver for the delta if it's more?
Right, but remember, the central issue here is that there's a 4-hour parking limit and an office isn't 4-hour parking,
Right,
remember? So that's why what my interpretation was, but it's an unintended legislative consequence, and it
Right.
didn't anticipate offices.
mhm,
And were you to issue like 30 parking waivers, you'd take up 3 or 4 blocks of Main Street.
right. Yeah,
So-
so we'll have to just figure out. I don't remember the language we used at 40 Main, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, and I think that what's key, which is, like I said, the way you always advise us, is to differentiate this application, right?
Right.
In whereas statements,
mhm.
right? I think that's what we're looking for.
Mhm.
So this is very
That it-
different.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is not an anomaly. The parking waiver regulation. right,
Applies here.
Applies.
Yeah.
As long
Okay,
as-
so it's based on square footage. It's going to be, we have 1 grandfathered, and it's gonna be a requirement for 4 additional parking spaces.
The waivers,
And
right?
it's a one-time fee, and it has no impact about the residential above it, correct? Okay,
Because that's not changing, yes.
no, that's not changing.
Yep, so that's grandfather, yeah.
All right, perfect.
I don't know if it makes any difference though, but from our current states, by your math, we should have like 9.
Right. Unfortunately, it does, but it's,
Okay, it doesn't matter where you
It's-
are. Okay.
yeah, it's always, the code is always forward facing, if you were staying in that space and making it smaller, then I think there's an argument to just say, listen,
Mhm.
do we really gotta buy waivers? The answer is probably still yes, but,
Well,
but,
yeah, so during the week, we have our administrative assistant. She's the only one that kind of stays there during the day.
Yeah.
I'm in and out, agents are in and out. Nobody's there for any length of time.
and that, John, if that helps you with your whereas statements, I mean, this is very different than an office of, where people are sitting at a desk for 8 hours.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to look up the definition. I don't know. It may not be considered an office use.
I object.
And
I don't know. But, okay,
A
yeah,
real estate office? What's a real estate office?
yeah, but I don't know. I've seen different categories for,
Is it retail? Are they selling houses?
it might be considered service, maybe. I'm not sure.
At the end of the day, we don't want to hold up the process and the approval process. So, whatever you guys deem best, we can go forward from there.
Yeah.
It's really the change of use
Hey,
is what
John,
we want.
if you think there's an argument to say this is retail, I don't think that's a stretch. I think they're selling houses. They don't stock them on the floor, but they're,
I think that's actually different.
If you want to call it retail, there's no change of use, and then we're grandfathered and we're good to go.
Well, yeah, I don't know if it's say it's retail, but so I think regardless, I think you have to, are you scheduling a public hearing? Does this require a public hearing, right?
I don't
Or no?
think it
Yeah.
does.
it's change of use, yeah.
Yeah.
For change of use does? Okay.
It does. All right, so there's nothing preventing you guys from scheduling a public hearing.
Agreed.
That's true. Which brings us to the next thing, which is public hearing. So, so there's a process, right, for getting yourself together for the public hearing. There's the public notice that has to go out. And then we'll vote on a date for the public hearing today. And then there are the 2 things that we talked about today that's still outstanding, so we can't have the public hearing until we review those other things, so the environmental assessment form and your parking table.
I'll get those to Jeff tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
So.
So in terms of the date,
2 weeks from now, what, the next session with us, or
Jeff, how early can we do
Yeah.
it
how?
with
how-
posting?
With informed.
So it's 10 days.
Aren't we on schedule, or is this a regular
no, this is
schedule?
the regular
This is
schedule, yeah,
regular.
so the
It's
25th.
So 25th.
Is that enough time?
For the whole procedures, if it's enough time,
Yeah.
if they have other contracts waiting to.
No, I think
get
the only
out.
thing that'll happen for us is, the prior one that we workshopped will probably fall on the same
We
day.
have one, don't we have one, the coffee shop, the tea
But
house?
that's, that's one, they'll
Yeah.
probably both end up on the same day.
That shouldn't be really a lot.
Hold on,
Yeah.
it's-
So,
Probably, yeah,
right, so
okay.
therefore, I think if we could just.
You think we could squeeze it in?
together, I think
Okay,
so.
I think
so,
fine as well.
motion to schedule public hearing on the 25th,
So moved.
all in favor?
Aye.
It's a second or no?
Yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Trying to pay
Awesome.
attention today.
Okay.
So public hearing
Yeah,
would be.
That's it, you just need
And then get your public notice from
Will be
Jeff.
25th.
I'll get it.
You
Yeah.
need a poster to put on the door, on the building,
Okay.
that it's under review. And then also,
I won't be here.
John's still doing the legal notices, right?
yeah,
I never draft them. I never return.
Yeah. yeah. John, let's ask, John, will you still draft the legal notices for the pub? for the-
So Karen's been drafting them and then I've been reviewing them,
Okay. good to
and it's
know.
been working out well.
Sounds good.
So you got,
Okay.
Oh, we
Yeah.
need blast for neighbor notification.
okay. That's not the same as a public notice?
It is, but we have to decide the blast on where it's going.
All right, what is the radius standard?
That thing makes no sense to me. Don't ask me. Somebody said something like 300 feet, but the code, well, that's in the zoning chapter, so it hasn't been changed yet. So we don't have anything in ours. What we have done in the past is just, 2 in each direction,
Yeah.
Okay,
and
okay.
2 and across the street, there's 3 across the street.
Well, that makes sense to me.
Neighbor notice, so they need to left and right and
And across
left
the
to,
street.
right to, cross the street.
And then mirror across the street.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's 7, probably 7 of them.
And those, Jeff can walk you through that, so you probably know, but it's certified
Yeah.
return receipt.
Mhm. All right, awesome. So I'll follow up with Jeff next week to make sure that we got those 3 things done so that we'll be able to have the public hearing on the 25th. Sound good?
So from a procedural perspective, so I have an understanding, we're going to public hearing, which is fantastic. And thank you for putting on the calendar for the 25th. I appreciate that. So the next, the waiver has to go to the front of the town board? Or is that something,
The village.
the village, I'm sorry, I'm here in town of Brewster. So it has to go through the village board. So is that a separate meeting and is that once a month? What's the typical time frame on the waiver on the next move?
Get it on the agenda.
The way to work is once they'll have the public hearing, if they vote to approve, they'll issue the resolution. The planning board will give me a letter for the board of trustees with a recommendation. Their recommendation on the parking table, and that will go before the board of trustees. The issuing of the parking waivers will not hold up the resolution or your public hearings. That happens afterwards.
Okay.
So the public hearing, they'll approve everything, and the final step really is the parking waivers.
Is the parking waivers? Okay, fantastic.
Okay. And you both are clear on what are the other outstanding items for next week? The environmental assessment, right? Okay, fantastic.
Do you need payment until or is the payment due by the public hearing, or is it due after the board approves?
After the board approves for the parking waivers.
Okay, and that's something that's transactional at the village hall, correct?
Correct.
All right.
All right, awesome. Thank you both.
Thank you very much. Pleasure meeting you all.
You too.
Give me a sign. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's approve some minutes. We're gonna go back up to the top of the agenda. So we have 2 sets of minutes to approve. The April 18th ones. And also the one from April 27th. Did everybody have a chance to look at them?
Yes, I did.
You did.
Uh,
Do you want to take a minute?
I was sitting at 134.
I have.
We don't know.
It's in there.
It's in,
Yes. Probably the first two.
Mhm. The only comment I have on the ones from the 27th is on the second or the third page, we have. It says Matt Francisco made a motion to schedule public hearing on the 25th. And then I assumed that. Is this? Was
The
that
dates
in
are-
relation to? 81 Main? Do you remember that?
Hold on.
I just want to make sure that's accurate.
It's,
Really?
what's the
Motion to
date?
schedule public hearing May 11th. That was the tea shop, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
May
25th.
20th.
25th. I just want to make sure that.
The
date's right.
25th,
Okay.
and then the April 14.
What happened April 14th?
Let's see. Look like it's under Food Town though.
April 18, there's no
Right.
April 14.
I'm sorry?
April 18, right?
It
Not
was
April
April
14.
18th,
Yeah.
We definitely did not schedule public hearing for Food Town, that's for sure.
So it should just be moved.
Did we do the tea shop on May 11th? Is that, oh, no, we didn't. Today's May 11th.
Today, yeah, we did the tea shop on the 27th.
April 27th.
Yeah, April 27th.
That was the last meeting.
That's it, yeah.
No, but the public hearing,
We
Public
haven't
hearing
done the
will be-
public hearing.
but we
That's
scheduled it, didn't we?
on the 25th, that's what I'm. wanting to
date's wrong.
confirm. Are you in the right notes?
May 18th.
No, it's these notes. 27th, notes, you're in the wrong notes.
What's this one then?
The 27th.
There are two of them.
Oh, my goodness.
Where is it? Where am I? Made a motion to schedule public hearing. That's the tea shop. Yeah,
That's the tea
Yeah.
shop.
yeah.
So I just want to confirm that. We're good?
So what's the other one?
The other one. was
That's what we did today. Hotel.
Food Town.
Oh, okay,
Public
right, right.
hearing.
Oh, good.
All right.
All right, yes.
Can I have a motion to approve the second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Wait, we don't have to. Okay, but we have a recording. All right, motion to approve the April 27th meeting minutes,
April 18th.
Second.
April 27th.
27th, sorry.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Fantastic, done.
Wait,
Do we, oh, I do have to ask him about the letter from Joe, because I don't have it in my packet.
Letter from,
Joe Curto,
wasn't that in the very front,
is that this?
after the thing here, I think.
yeah, it's.
Yeah, the next page, isn't it?
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna, I'd like to make a motion to table that. Our discussions about Hudson Valley Fjord Trail to next time.
Okay,
Okay, I'm fine.
agree.
Any
All right.
second?
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. We'll do that next time. Which will include reading the letter from Joe, which is about the Fjord
Fjord
Trail
Trail,
into the record.
Okay.
All right, any report from members?
As I'm usually sitting over there, so I don't see the screen. Have you guys been attending the village board meetings on the review of the zoning?
Yes,
Yeah. Oh, you're online?
no, I was sitting somewhere.
Oh,
in
the
the
first, on one of them, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
But there's been one more or two more? I don't even
There was
remember.
one more, and
Feels
then
like
there's
forever.
another one,
Yeah.
coming up next week.
yeah.
The 16th.
Yep, there's another one.
16th.
Yeah, on Tuesday instead of Wednesday.
April 16th we were talking about, or
May,
No, next.
today is only May 11th.
yes.
Yeah, so next
So
Tuesday.
next
Tuesday.
Yeah, so next one,
Is a,
I should-
is
yeah,
going to be a public
I
hearing.
should
So
be
there's-
there.
There's obviously a lot of comment. And the vast. Some of it is about process, right? The lack of transparency. But what's more alarming to me is just the number of errors and corrections. that really kind of throw the understanding of the chapters into kind of it's really kind of a quandary. So I just wondered if you guys had witnessed any of that or had looked at at least the videos.
I attended one of the meetings
Yeah.
and
The first one, yeah.
yeah, the first one. And I think my interpretation of the public comment was that there was concern about access. The main things that I got from the public was that there was concern about access to the
Right.
site and, just traffic.
Right.
And the feasibility of adding, and then just pressures on the school district and,
Right.
so I think it was kind of it's a proposed change to the zoning code. And
It's
it has the potential, yeah, and it
Yeah.
has the potential, and it's something they've been working
Right.
on for a long time, and then in this compressed period, they, make further edits, a lot of detail. We didn't see it until last month, and so there is a lot of detail, and like by virtue of all the edits, like there's gotta be discrepancies, and just like anytime you have a draft, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot.
It was not presented to us as a draft.
Oh,
It was
okay, yeah.
something that was, we were told would go to public hearing, be voted into law. by
But
the
then
end
they
of this
walked
month.
out, yeah, but
Okay.
then,
Right.
Well,
but,
that's
yeah,
changed. So
that's
in order to
changed.
have a productive conversation, there's two things I want to do.
yeah.
One, before we do that, Jeff, we approved the minutes while you were gone. The two that was on the agenda. So, number one, from a process standpoint, last time we talked, we threw out a couple of dates to have a special meeting where we, kind of got together.
Yes.
And the subject was only feedback, our feedback, sort of discussing what we would put in the draft recommendation to the village board of trustees. So I want to make sure that we still want to do that on the 23rd, because that's what the date that
That's a
we.
special meeting, which is.
It's
the
our
Tuesday,
special
yeah.
meeting. Yep, the
I-
public will be invited, but it is our special meeting to talk about our feedback. I just want to make sure that we still want to do that.
I do not.
Why?
Well, I hadn't finished. So when the first meeting was predominantly that, Larry, you're right. But that's because people had less than a couple of hours with the code, right? The second meeting has been when people have gone through it, people like Marie Early, who is an encyclopedia between code update and code and comp plan, Michael Reisman, who's very similar. There's an excellent letter from him about kind of calling these things out. I don't know how much time have you guys spent with it? I've spent countless hours. My opinion is the document is not ready. And I can't provide comment on a document that I would have to interpret and correct and then say it's my comment, right? Do you know what I mean? If for example, all the condos get rezoned multifamily. Multifamily is a single building with a maximum of 4 dwellings. Springbrook, Forge Gate, Butterfield are out of conformance in day one, right? We talked about these things last night, and frankly, I think if I'm the board, condos, attorney, I'm going to say sue to protect your rights, get an interpretation immediately, right? There are so many errors there, voluminous. Marie, I think.
Wait, so I just want to understand, the issue is that because they're zoned differently to what the other condos. the
They're
other
all being
develop-
rezoned. The entire village is being rezoned except for B1.
Right, and so if they're all being rezoned, so that needs to change, that would be like a comment from us, say that you can't rezone the whole.
I don't agree. I respectfully, because
Yeah.
what we are asked to do is to provide our comment, right? Our interpretation of what they're giving us. I don't think it's ready to do that. That's my point, is that, for example, you then look, it refers to uses that don't exist, right? So you then have to interpret what the intent was and then provide a comment. You then started essentially editing the document, right? And last night they got into, one second, really quick. Last night they got into building placement, right? And Laravosi said, oh, we're gonna have to rework that section. Because if you place the building, what it says in the code is you have to, if you do work, you have to continue to bring the building into conformance. You know how bad that is as an architect, right? As a
Well,
designer.
Yeah,
No, to reduce it non-conformity.
yeah,
You can't do that,
Mhm.
right? what it should say is you cannot increase nonconformity with a modification.
Mhm.
But I'm not gonna provide a comment saying that I am changing what they're writing and providing the comment.
I guess the counter argument, Matt, is like one of the things that in the previous meetings, our board focused on was the fact that.
I missed it.
The fact.
It all went smoothly.
Thumbs up.
Okay,
Um,
thank you.
Where, train of thought. We focused a lot on the process, right? As a board, we said the process of the writing of this rezoning, right? This like final process, we said, you know, it would have been good for there to be more involvement of the planning board and so forth, right? So, and that, you know, that's a fair point. No, exactly. But all I'm saying is like, this is our opportunity to be involved. I guess I kind of see it as like, isn't this our opportunity as a planning board to be involved in the process? Maybe I'm not understanding something procedurally.
Yeah, what I would like to close on today is the how do we get there?
Right.
Because we can't keep
Right.
having this exact same meeting complaining about the
Yes.
process. I would
I'm
really
not
like,
saying
so
that
what,
across the ship sail.
oh, okay, great. So
Yeah.
now that we're done with that, what is the best way to get either a red line to them so that they can produce a third draft
It's our feedback,
or?
like it doesn't
or
have to
is
They
it,
are
like, what
talking
is-
about doing their own red line. They're making so many changes, there's going to be a red line. What
What
the
that-
planning board is supposed to be giving opinion on is a finished document. And then we approve it or not, right? That's the process, right? That's the legal process.
Matt, I
don't-
don't think that's necessarily true. They're not,
But
they're not presenting a final product to the public. The point is to present it to the public for comment as well as to the planning board for comment. And then generally a planning board issues a report. And so the village board can accept some of the recommendations. They could not accept or ignore some of the recommendations as they can do with the public comment. So this is the whole point of the process, is to get it out there, get it to the planning board, because you guys are on the front lines, quite honestly, dealing with the zoning board as well, and the HDRB, and to the public, and then they'll take the comments, and then they'll accept or deny whatever changes, and if there are substantial changes, you know, then they'll have to take it from there, and the village board will determine what to do after that. But right now they're trying to get all the input they can. It's not a
But
final product by any means.
right, but if you don't even understand the intent, because there is so much error, whether or not it's errors of reference, errors of judgments, errors in of omission, errors of how it would be applied, what is your comment?
Right, so then I would recommend, if you feel that way, I would say, with the caveat at the end of any report that the planning board produces, if majority of the planning board members feel the same way you feel, then you just say, you know, this has been very difficult because we felt there were so many errors and whatnot that, you know, it's, you know, you could put a caveat at the end of the report if the majority of the planning board members feel the same way as you do. But I mean, I guess what's the other alternative is not to provide any comments. You know, that's not really going to help the process. But I understand your point, Matt, because, you know, you're trying to wrap your head around it and you feel like it's difficult to follow. But that's certainly a comment. And then I would put a caveat at the end of your report saying, you know, we feel like we need another, you know, if a majority of the board feels that way, that they would like to see a revised report and issue another comment, another report. I'm sorry, they'd like to see a revised zoning amendments and issue another report. You know, that's something you can put in there as a recommendation.
And to be clear, my pushback is not that it's hard. It's not about the work. It's about, I don't know how to approach it when I don't know what they're trying to get at. Right? You know, if for example, you're referring to a use that no longer exists or a use that doesn't apply there, how do I then give my comment on that use?
So to me, this conversation is the very one we should be having with the folks that created it, maybe on the 23rd, when we have a meeting dedicated solely to our feedback and our comments. This is what I'm trying to get us to.
But I
get
haven't,
to.
how much time have you guys spent like literally going through line by line?
I mean, in the first reading, the comments that I sent to Jack, I think I went through it. I read the whole thing. It was really a challenge because I don't read
Right.
documents that long on my computer.
Right.
But it was, I could provide some broad feedback, and I
Right.
did. I didn't get so into the design section towards the end, ironically. But, again, I sort of, it was sort of like I ran out of time. That's really the only reason. I think I
Yeah.
could provide
Yeah.
some like input, about inconsistencies and I think Jack did include those comments in the first document. Some of, like, he compiled a bunch of comments, and I felt like they represented what
Right.
I contributed.
I don't know what you are concentrating on while you're reading it. When I read through this, I have so many questions on different, some of them is broader, some of them are just very specific. For example, there was one saying, if you have this for 5 years, then you can build an excess building after 5 years. But then, there are different things that I go into those details and then say, why is this? How about that? So what are we trying to do here? Are we gonna ask general questions, or are we gonna ask detailed questions?
Yeah.
That's where, last time when we had our meeting, it's basically today, we should come up with some questions and then try to put it together and have something and then present to the other group,
Yeah.
working group or
Yes.
something. So,
Yes.
so I don't know,
That's still the intent, still the intent. And so what I'm trying to get us to is do we still agree that we want to do that? And is that day the 23rd, where we come with our questions, feedback, and then we invite Ted and Jonathan and John back again. But also, both John and Ted and Jonathan are prepared to answer the questions that you raised previously. So that's also why they're on the phone. So we
Today.
can do that today,
Okay.
right? Specifically,
Which
the,
questions are they?
you, oh,
That's
yeah, you had so many. It
I think there was an email on the 28th
on the
of 28th of April.
On the.
Was that
regarding
the,
on
the legal status of the
yeah, well, I
2022.
assume that's,
But before we go to that, I
Right.
would really love us to close on how are we gonna
Look.
do this?
I'll follow the majority opinion.
Okay.
I do not think it's productive. I've been doing this a long time. I think that you need to have a document that it's at least halfway there. I mean, I know this
Can
code.
you articulate what's not there?
Have you looked at the spreadsheet about the questions?
Yes,
Well, just listen to Marie Early's comments. Did you hear?
Yes.
this?
yes,
Yeah.
I just think we have to
I've got-
document the
I've got-
what's not
I've got
there.
6 pages.
Yeah,
And the problem is, like I said, and this is not about, I've already done the work. It's not about not doing the work.
okay,
It's about providing an opinion on something that I can't, that I would be ascribing intent to, and it's not my document, right? I don't, I
so do you
think
think
that's,
that
I think
how
that's
could that be
dangerous.
solved by asking questions to whom?
Yeah, I guess to the committee, right?
Okay,
I mean,
so would you like me, who in the committee do you want there?
if you guys agree as a majority that we should do this, that's fine. I'll go along with
This
it.
is the only way to get to any kind of
Process.
or recommendation
Right.
to the village board.
But if
We're
there
ready
is,
to go.
but if the deadline, right, of this, end of June is not there anymore, right?
Yeah, Kathleen said that she will have it open as long as needed,
Right.
but what we talked about in our last meeting was to make sure that we wrap our feedback up and give our recommendation by the end of May.
Yeah.
So if we still want to do that, we gotta figure that out.
I think just since you guys, I'm sorry, I wasn't there at the last meeting.
Which
So
one?
the one
The
where I
last,
came
yeah.
5 minutes
Oh, that.
before the end. But I think if that was the intent that we talked about,
Mhm.
the board talked about, I think it sort of behooves us, benefits us to kind of stick to it, just so that we can keep the ball rolling in terms of getting those comments, whatever they end up being. And we I guess what I'm trying, and I think Sue's question is kind of interesting, is like, can we as a board today decide like how high level or low level we want to make our feedback. Like what's the most productive way to provide feedback? Is it, does that make sense? High level, low level? Like I just mean
Well,
like
it
kind of
does,
fine
except
grain.
that-
Is it
except
a list
that-
of questions?
Yes.
Is it a red line?
Right, that's what I
We
mean.
each do our own red line, because it's
Yeah.
for the committee to then.
Right. With the understanding
Consume
that,
the
you know, were
feedback.
this to be adopted, we
Yeah,
don't live at the high level. We say, you know, if the use is B4A, B4A doesn't exist anymore. What is
Yeah.
the use? I mean, we're gonna look at this chapter and go, I don't know, what do we do? Right? And this is, I'm not being difficult.
yes, you are.
I'm being careful, right? And I'm
Yeah.
always careful, right?
know,
When somebody,
being facetious.
when, yeah, exactly. No, I know. When somebody wants me to give my opinion, I want to be certain that I have an opinion. I always tell my folks, there's a difference between what you think and there's and what you know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to operate in the what I think and what my interpretation is.
Yeah,
And you have to do that almost incessantly in this document.
Okay.
Right? So if you've been mired in the code is the way, you know, is the way some of us have, like Marie and
Mhm,
Marie and I have spent a lot of time together and a lot of time on the phone.
mhm.
And it's just like, do you see this? Yeah, I see this too. Well, that can't be. And then you go over here and it's like, well,
But
that's
is
wrong.
that comments that you had, because like there's a way to put comments in the document. Should we give one version of the document back that just has comments in it ahead of the 23rd? And then invite members of the committee to respond to the comments?
I did actually ask Marie's,
no, I'm not to just,
Right.
Marie's not on the board, so.
Right,
I
well-
didn't- She's in the public, right?
No,
She's-
but-
right.
And she
Okay.
has a lot of experience, of course, but
already provided her
she- that's my
Yeah,
point, is that
that's
she
the-
she
well,
has,
she
she gave
had
that
a
whole,
list.
her list.
Or
I just don't want to be
something. Did she
redundant.
get
Yeah, and that's
answers?
not,
Did she get
Yeah.
answers?
Well, I don't know.
All
if you
those
got the
answers
answer.
supposed to be public
Yeah.
because
You
the
should,
village
yeah.
said they will answer all the
watch the
questions.
video. then.
Oh.
But
Right,
if
right.
you, but if you say comments,
Oh,
if you look at these things, I mean,
Much.
how are we gonna submit these comments? I have comments on every page. What are we
That's
gonna do?
great. I
That's
think-
wonderful. I
yeah.
think they need that. Maybe, do you want me to help you put that electronically so that we can just give that document? Like,
I think
I'm just
to that
trying to
same
figure
point,
out a way,
Yeah.
or another suggestion.
Yeah.
We could take all of your comments in your document and yours, and I'm happy to like look through it and summarize it and say, hey, here are all the open questions, major section errors here. And here are the comments and here are the things we want to discuss on the
Yeah.
23rd, because there may be
Yeah.
big things we want to discuss on
Yeah.
the 23rd, and everything else is just.
Yeah.
Noise, or not noise, but you know,
Right.
nitpicky stuff that we're like, make sure that this gets covered.
do we
Yeah,
want, yeah,
I don't know, because if this is a draft, okay, for example, when I read it, I go through and then they say, okay, it's a multifamily units, it's a single family or it's two and it has a courtyard and so on. There are a lot of things, but basically, if there is not a approved zoning thing, why are we going into all these details of the design? There is nothing there. So what are we looking at? If something doesn't exist and then we keep doing it, but this thing, if it doesn't go, why do we comment on those things?
You mean
it
the
just seems to
zoning
be-
code in general?
No,
Or
no.
that section you're
Yeah,
talking about?
well, a lot of details in here.
Mhm.
They really specify what you can build, what you cannot, and so on and so forth, especially the multi-use ones.
Right.
Okay, but if the zoning thing, assuming this thing is good,
You're mostly
Then-
talking about just marathon.
there are some other things I have
Right,
questions
right.
in zoning in general, but
Mhm.
assuming this whole thing exists, okay, and then we go into a lot of details, then it makes sense. But if that thing is not approved or going to be changed, whatever we comment on may not even exist in the future. What are we doing? That's basically my question. I went through this, all of that. I looked at different
So
versions.
Sue, are you asking that, I think what I'm hearing you say is that, given the fact that you feel that this document is in a sort of initial draft state, the comments that we provide should be broader and more pulled back and not fine grained. I don't
Or are
know,
you saying we need another draft? We need the next draft.
Well, yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
to me, I think it should be, if we ask
We're
questions,
reviewing
it
the
should be
wrong
broad,
draft.
it should be broader
Yeah.
questions, okay? I cannot give you one, but it should be broader. For
Okay.
example, some people like in the meeting there, some people ask, why do we zone this, the old residence area and that's new? What is the purpose of that? I mean, I went through, I didn't know why we label those. I mean,
They're not just labels, they are districts,
yeah,
right? They are-
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, but why we label those as districts? What is the purpose of saying that? Well, does that mean if you build a new house in the old residence zone or something, then therefore you cannot do something? Or-
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
there's a set of
so,
requirements for RO.
so,
Oddly, like, for some reason, Marathon, that will all be new, is going to be RO. I don't know why.
so,
You just, so you go through this and you just keep kind of scratching your head going, you didn't, either you missed something or you intend to do something else, or, and so to then say, here's my opinion on your work, right?
On
I will
something
tell
that
you
is
if this
difficult
would,
to
yes,
enforce.
yeah, I mean, if it, well, yeah. It would be difficult for us just to,
Mhm.
just to, to get to where we need, I mean, obviously, the parking table says X, right? The parking table is interesting too, like how they're gonna calculate the parking, so and then also too, to really look at the site plan review, it is really burdensome, and everything requires a site plan review.
So is the burdensome site plan process, or is that how much more? I mean, I guess.
That's the least of my concerns.
No, I
to be frank.
know, yeah, because I actually think like, again, the site plan the site plan review process probably is something that was written in, I don't want to make assumptions, but when I see that there's.
Here's a lot.
Right, so when I see that there's a site plan process that is put before the planning board, I'm like, oh, there's a role for us here, right? So that to avoid developments that are not glanced at through
Yeah.
this lens or,
Right.
looked at through this lens and approved. So yeah, it's just like one more step or two more steps than usual because of the scale. Is that would,
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No. But that's the least of my concern. I
Yeah.
mean, as long, if it's clear and it's consistent and it's a process, that's fine. It's just that, when you refer to a use that doesn't exist, or you refer to something that is wrong,
Yeah.
right? You're just like, wait, where do I go now?
right, so I think that's.
It's like having a roadmap that will, drive you off a cliff,
Mhm.
right?
which
So
one?
are
If
there
you Google.
Yeah, and they
Yeah.
did say last night, now, and another thing, so a couple of things, with the meeting last night,
Uh-huh.
I think most of the things that were recommended by the public, a lot of them, early, Riceman, were reviewed by the committee and accepted, and they're gonna make the change.
Mhm.
So to your point, this document is going to change,
Uh,
right? And I think I am at least glad to see last night that there seems to be an understanding that this is nowhere near done, right? I think.
process, yeah.
right.
There's
What, there's a couple things that were concerning. One was that the mayor was really pretty difficult, to put it mildly. That, she didn't want anybody to repeat a comment that had already been presented, right? And people were kind of being shouted down. So I don't, I don't get paid enough to know what was ever said by anybody ever, right? I mean, listen, we can do what we can do, but there
Right.
has to be kind of an openness
Yeah.
and an open-mindedness to. And what was interesting, even some comments were made that sounded slightly like other ones, but were shouted down, and that's not actually my question.
Yeah, but
and-
we can't solve for that,
Yeah,
right? So.
I don't
Well,
that's a-
well, the question, but my point is, you do all the work for the comment, right, or the effort, and it's rejected, right?
But we
We're
have
in a different
we have a
position.
unique opportunity to. Where we're being asked to provide on the record.
I don't think that's unique,
Feedback.
that's what the planning board does, I mean.
Right, I'm
Unique
I'm
separate to
comparing that,
public.
exactly, I'm comparing that to your comment now about the public and, your
Oh,
your
right,
feedback about what happened with the public. We are not in that position.
fair point.
But I would love us to align on. How we want to give the feedback, and are we saying right now that there are major high-level things that we would like to workshop, talk about, to understand before we issue a final recommendation or
Right.
advice, which may include, we would request that we also get another opportunity to review it again before it gets voted on.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Once,
because
once the public
yeah.
feedback gets incorporated and once our feedback gets,
I
our
think that's-
preliminary
I think
feedback
that
gets
step is important.
incorporated.
I think that step is
That-
important because while the attorneys don't want to say that changes are substantive, because then that triggers another public hearing, they're substantive. I don't, you know.
Just,
I-
the public hearing's open, Matt, so you can make.
Understood, no, but
change as
like,
you
you know,
want.
like the comment was just basically that if it changes, you would need a different public hearing, right?
Yeah,
If
but
you actually,
As long as the
What's that?
public hearing's open, it doesn't matter. The
okay,
problem is if the public hearing was closed and then
Okay.
the board made a bunch of substantial changes, I think is the term they use, then they would have to reopen the public hearing.
Arraignment
At 8:30?
at 8:30.
Okay.
okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and this is why they're keeping it open, because this is why they're keeping it open. Because
Yeah.
it's an ongoing process where they're still collecting comments.
Okay.
Well, maybe the chair
So
could ask
here's
for
what I would-
more time.
Yeah, what I would like to recommend is that we keep the special meeting on the 23rd. Invite John, Jonathan and Ted back, one to address your feedback, that your questions and comments that was in the email. And guys, the reason we're unfortunately not able to do it today is because I don't believe we'll be able to get it out in 25 minutes. Because there's an
no, we should.
arraignment
You're
that
just-
needs to happen.
You're just talking about the legal questions, right? That's all been resolved, hasn't it?
I think
I mean,
Ted,
that's why
yeah,
Ted,
How long does it take, how long will it take you to
Yeah,
respond?
because we also have to vote on what we're gonna do next.
yeah,
you guys talking to me? I can't tell.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
that's why we're
Um,
all looking at the screen.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if you were looking at the screen or just, so, I think Ted revised the EAF pursuant to your comments, right, Matt, where he had changed something?
You guys run this email. I basically said, listen, you have to use the district lot dimensions. You can't take a residential use and use the residential district lot dimensions.
Okay.
So the EAF came out projecting 52 lots. I said, I think Ted then has redone it. Obviously, he has looked at that. So I was surprised that there was even a question yesterday about, you know, the 4 cases and do we have all cases? I mean, it sounds
Oh.
like you've already,
Yeah,
You know-
I mean, as long as you guys are fine with what Ted's analysis and that answers your question, then we're all good then. I just
Yeah,
want to
so
make
that's
sure.
it basically, just
Okay.
that
So,
when you show the public
Yes.
an EAF and you are the village board of trustees, the legislative executive, with a concerning density of 52, when it actually should be, I'm not sure it's 11, because I'm not sure how you have any roads. There's an acre or so that can't be developed. There's a steep slope. I mean, I think it's probably closer to 8, but who's picking? Because 11's a heck of a lot closer than 52.
mhm,
The right number is somewhere around 11, right?
Okay.
And that's, you want to make sure that you're telling the public the truth, right?
Well, I think that kind of detailed feedback is really like,
That's
that,
done.
that was
It's done.
helpful, right?
So
That's it.
that to
That's
me
it.
is an example of what we need to do more of. So would love for us to be able to get to doing more of that, because I'm happy that you gave the feedback. You got, it was changed, right? And you're satisfied. So between now and the 23rd, I think we should create a consolidated list of these big, you know, glaring items, to your point, at a high level. And then have a send it ahead of time, right, to the folks on the call. And then have a conversation just about that on the 23rd, public will come.
Right.
And
And you
then-
guys will not have the same requirement that it can't be a comment you've ever heard before, or otherwise we get yelled at?
That doesn't apply here,
Okay, good,
Okay.
good. No, I'm just making sure that they agree.
yeah,
You should watch the tape last night.
yeah, it does apply. So I'd like a motion to say that that's where we're gonna have a special meeting on the 23rd, just about our high level feedback and we all agree to be there. Yes?
Okay, so we propose
Agreed.
that we keep the
All right, to
old.
keep
All right,
it,
so my,
Old, decision we made last time, that we
Yes.
will have this meeting,
Yes.
a special meeting on the
23rd.
23rd.
look, I'll follow what you guys want to do. I do feel the way I started out, but if the
Yeah.
majority wants to go the other way, mine will just, I think we absolutely need to have a caveat to say,
Okay.
partly is to say, let's see this red line, right?
Mhm.
Because you can't change hardly anything without the impact being
Yeah.
different, right?
Yeah.
So you need to look at that next one, right?
Okay.
But I'm gonna say, no different than when you review something and you make a list of assumptions, right? Here are my assumptions going into this project, right?
Mhm.
Which is, I'm gonna have to make leaps of faith around what I think the intent is.
So,
Got it.
so-
And I
so
think
the
that-
new red line would include comments or answers to the questions raised during the previous meetings, such as the ones that Marie and
We would hope, and I can, if you want, I'll ask the village board of
if they
trustees.
have one,
Yeah.
we should be able to see
But I
it.
don't think we're gonna be able to use that now
Right.
ahead of the meeting on the 23rd, which is why we're staying at a high
Oh, no,
level, the
yeah.
big glaring things that we
Okay.
see. And then part of what we would like is another opportunity to review that first draft before it gets
Okay,
approved. We do have members of the public here. And we have 20 minutes,
Yeah,
Before
probably
there's
as I
a-
said, there's, we
period,
probably have another 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So
10 minutes.
They're
Yeah.
preparing for an arraignment. That,
So,
Public have any comment?
does the public have any comments?
Thank you for your service.
Aw.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for the support.
Like going to the drive and we were walking by, we thought we
Really?
need energy.
No, it just sounds really tough, so thank
Yeah.
you. It's
Thanks.
not easy to-
Yeah, thank you. All right.
Can one other question. So the mayor sent around this about remote participation in meetings.
Yes.
So we should, how do people feel about that? I know you attend remotely quite a bit.
I'm happy to be here, every now and then I have illness or
Yeah.
family emergencies that I can't.
Good night.
I think it is more productive in person as long as there's not like a emergency or illness.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
that,
I'll
like,
probably have to be here less only because of commute. I didn't get, it took me 2.5 hours.
It's okay, that's work
That's a
related.
stipulation.
2.5 hours.
Yeah, that's in there.
Yeah, that's it. Work related travel.
Work related.
Well, that's what's interesting, John. So when you guys did all the remote meetings trainings from Department of State, right?
Yeah.
So if you remember that training, what they said was a standing board can pass their own resolution to allow remote participation as long as the legislative and executive body doesn't disallow remote.
Right, but we never did that. So because we didn't do that, we're bound by.
Yeah, I'm not, that's interesting. So who told you that? Was that like the committee on
Department of State.
government, Department of State?
Yeah,
Yeah.
And when was
State.
that? When did they tell you that?
this year's training session,
This
they do
year.
this 3. Yeah, and so they said that the standing boards can just issue their own resolution and allow participation. Now, what they said was anything is an extraordinary circumstance. Nobody cares, right? Kathleen, I think, has a different interpretation. I think went further and they passed a resolution to have like childcare, illness, so now what was broadly defined as an extraordinary situation, which Department of State said, that's anything. As long as you have your physical quorum in place, the others can participate remotely. The mayor has a different interpretation, and then I think the village board passed a resolution that then defined they didn't leave it at the state level where they just say extraordinary circumstances. They said illness, work-related travel, whatever.
But that's what most boards, that's what most legislative boards did. That's how most of them did it, is they as a legislative board defined what that extraordinary circumstance was. In those scenarios, I don't have the policy off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it was consistent with what I've seen in other municipalities. I always thought the intent was that you really should be there unless childcare, illness, work-related items come up at the last minute. It wasn't like a thing, and I don't know, maybe that's changed. But my understanding was pretty much how the village had adopted its policy is how it was presented. and it was how other municipalities adopted very similar policies.
I'll take another look. I think with the
Yeah.
training, they send you the link of the video,
Yeah.
right?
Yep,
Yeah,
and all the documentation.
yeah.
Yeah, so, before we adjourn, thank you, Jonathan and Ted, and John for being on the call. Hopefully you guys, I'll send an email afterwards. Maybe you guys can, also come back on the 23rd. But we'll make sure that we have something sent to you ahead of time so you can be prepared to respond.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks.
Motion
Thanks.
Yeah,
adjourned.
thank you.
Okay.
good night.
All those,
Aye.
yes, aye. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, it should now, status resignation. Okay.